When her mom died, me and my daughter was estranged. Yeah, yeah, thank you for that. Bobby Brown has finally broken the wall of silence, unleashing a revelation that stunned the world. His confession about his role in the death of Whitney Houston was no longer a rumor, no longer a whisper on the sidelines, but a bombshell truth from the mouth of an insider, the man who once held Whitney's hand through both stardom and tragedy. From that moment, all eyes turned to him. Was it guilt, remorse, or simply a belated justification? Whitney's fans were heartbroken, the public was outraged, and the media was desperate to peel back every layer of this love story. Marriage, tragedy, a saga full of blood and tears, there's no denying it. That confession changed everything, turning Bobby into the central figure in the haunting obsession known as Whitney Houston. Before we dive into the chilling secrets behind the scenes, don't forget to like and subscribe to join us on this journey to uncover the shocking truth. The light of fame and the shadow always walk hand in hand, and in the story of Bobby Brown and Whitney Houston, that contrast was starkly evident from the moment they united. The image of their 1992 wedding once astonished the world. The diva with the greatest voice of her generation and the rebellious R&B singer entering a seemingly impossible marriage. They were called a power couple, a union of two burning musical souls. But behind that magnificent facade, cracks began to appear, and vague behind-the-scenes stories filled the public with both admiration and curiosity, which slowly turned into doubt. From there, the shadow of suspicion relentlessly enveloped them, growing year after year. From day one, the press was unyielding. They wrote about their happy smiles at the wedding, only to capture their tired, tense gazes a few months later at events. The media always found details to exaggerate, turning every gesture into evidence of a turbulent marriage. Whitney, accustomed to the stage lights and the perfect image her management built, seemed to crumble when tied to Bobby. His raw, blunt nature clashed with her gentle, reserved demeanor. That conflict, in the public eye, became a tragedy waiting to explode. Some insiders recalled that their press conferences and public events were often filled with unspoken tension. A cold stare or a forced smile was enough for rumors to erupt. People whispered that the vast differences between the two, a diva forced to maintain a flawless image and a raw, untamable artist, were the seeds of their tragedy. One newspaper even likened them to fire and wind, beautiful and blazing, yet easily capable of destroying each other. From that point on, the image of a passionate love affair gradually morphed into a story with many dark corners. In his memoir, Every Little Step, years later, Bobby Brown admitted that his marriage to Whitney was not easy. That short phrase, seemingly a gentle confession, ignited a whole chain of speculation. If it wasn't easy, then what was it really? People began to piece together old news clips, old photos, and fragmented stories from acquaintances, building the image of a couple constantly struggling with conflict. The public didn't just stop at speculation. They placed the blame on Bobby, claiming his very presence was the source of Whitney's loss of balance. The rumors grew more and more intense, and each piece of news was like a dagger twisting into their private lives. An old friend once shared that Whitney was often exhausted, frequently complaining about the pressures of both her marriage and career. That rumor spread, morphing into a story that the complex marriage was one of the factors that pulled Whitney into an inescapable vortex. And when the press collectively repeated it, it was no longer just a scattered anecdote, but became the truth in the public's eyes. The bitter irony was that to fans, Bobby and Whitney's love should have been a real-life fairy tale, but all they saw was an ever-deepening rift. The public began to question, was this true love, or was it a marriage worn down by the spotlight and the pressure of fame? People debated endlessly, some sympathizing with Whitney, others blaming Bobby, and some believing they were both victims of their own choices. And then the whispers crossed a line. From discussing conflict, the press moved to analyzing Bobby's impact on Whitney's career. Some international papers even subtly implied that the marriage eroded the flawless image of the female singer. These perspectives, despite lacking concrete evidence, were passed on as confirmation, casting Bobby as the one to be criticized. Meanwhile, Whitney, already exhausted from the pressure, became an even greater focus of public sympathy. Looking back at the early stages of this marriage, It's not hard to see that light and shadow were always in tow. They were both hailed as the golden couple of music and mercilessly dissected as a tragedy exposed to the public. That conflict existed not only within their marriage, but also in how the world viewed them. A mix of admiration and criticism, sympathy and judgment. It was in those years that the first shadow of doubt fell over Whitney Houston's life, a shadow that people continue to revisit to this day. The initial vows sounded like sacred music, but over time, they became a heavy burden on both of their shoulders. Whitney Houston and Bobby Brown once walked down the aisle to the cheers of thousands of fans, with blinding flashes confirming what was called a perfect marriage. But behind that sparkling curtain, the truth was far different. What people saw was just a painted shell. Inside, the conflict had begun to fester very early on. Bobby, in his memoir, didn't hesitate to admit it wasn't easy. Those 3 words, short but heavy, were like a knife cutting through all public illusions of a dream marriage. Because it wasn't easy didn't just mean ordinary marital conflicts. It meant tense arguments, cold stares instead of hand-holding, and the helplessness that comes when love turns into a struggle. Insiders once said that whenever they were near them backstage, the atmosphere would become thick with tension. A look from Whitney or a frown from Bobby was enough for the entire crew to feel the strain. Yet when the curtain rose, they still smiled, still stood side by side as if nothing were wrong. That was the most cruel contradiction. The spotlight forced them to play the role of a happy couple, while the reality behind the scenes was the complete opposite. The media, of course, never missed those moments. A small public disagreement, and the press would immediately scream, "Marriage on the brink." If they left an event through 2 different doors, it instantly became headline news. The power couple has broken up. The press loves tragedy, and in Whitney and Bobby, they found a gold mine. Millions of readers devoured every snippet of news with no one caring what was true and what was fabricated. Gradually, the image of a chaotic marriage became the public's default perception. Rumors started to spring up, persistent as a ghost. People said that Whitney, a global star, had to endure double the pressure when she married Bobby. Her immense career weighed on every meal, every night's sleep. Friends revealed that she was often exhausted, complaining about having to balance her queen of the stage image with her role as a wife in a home full of discord. These stories, though never fully verified, were enough for the public to believe that marital stress had pulled her into a dead-end spiral.